At Thanksgiving, Dad laughed. We weren't perfect. And I thought, you weren't even trying to be decent. The laugh was the worst part. It wasn't nervous or apologetic, just that familiar belly chuckle he uses when he's making a joke at someone's expense. He took a sip of beer, leaned back in the dining chair that creaked under him, and looked around the table like he'd just said something profound. The overhead light was too bright, bouncing off the cheap gold rim on the plates Mom only ever brings out this time of year. The turkey carcass sat half-carved in the middle, skin drying out while everyone shifted in their seats. My fork hovered over my plate, hand shaking just enough that the mashed potatoes wobbled. I could feel my heartbeat in the back of my throat, this steady thud-thud that made it hard to swallow. It was the first Thanksgiving I'd been to in 4 years. The last one ended with me in my car at the end of their street, crying so hard I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the tears. After that, I told myself I was too busy or couldn't get the time off work. This year, my therapist suggested I might be ready to try going back with grounding tools, boundaries, and exit plan. I said yes because a stupid part of me still wanted the Hallmark version of this holiday. Warm lighting, inside jokes, people actually seeing each other. Instead, I got Dad holding court at the head of the table, Mom bustling in and out with side dishes, my younger brother zoning out on his phone under the table, and me trying not to vibrate out of my own skin. The "we weren't perfect" line came during one of Dad's speeches. He loves a speech. The food had just been blessed. Mom's quick, perfunctory, "Thank you, Lord, for this meal and our family." And Dad decided we needed to go around and say what we were grateful for. I said something vague about my job and my friends. My brother grunted some joke about being grateful for football. Mom said she was grateful we were all together again. Then Dad, flushed and loose from his third beer, raised his glass. "I'm grateful for my kids," he said, looking at me a beat too long. "Even if they're mad at us right now for, what do they call it? Childhood trauma." He smirked. Mom giggled automatically. "We weren't perfect," he added with that laugh, like the phrase itself absolved him. Everyone looked at their plates. No one called him out. No one ever does. That's when the thought slipped in like a knife between my ribs. You weren't even trying to be decent. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. My jaw locked instead. I took a sip of water to give my mouth something else to do and nearly choked. For context, I'm 30. I started therapy at 27 after I couldn't get through a workday without wanting to crawl under my desk every time my manager said, "Can we talk?" I thought I was there to fix my anxiety about emails. Instead, I ended up talking about my childhood for months. The shouting, the heavy silence, the way my body still tenses when someone puts a glass down too hard on a table. The way my father's footsteps on the hallway floorboards used to make my vision tunnel. Growing up, if you'd asked anyone in our extended family what kind of dad mine was, they'd say strict, but good. They'd point to the roof over our heads, the school uniforms paid for, the weekend barbecues, the way he never missed a single one of my brother's soccer games. They wouldn't mention the time he smashed my phone against the wall because I rolled my eyes, or the time he held my report card inches from my face and screamed that I was wasting his hard-earned money because I got a B in maths instead of an A. And they definitely wouldn't mention that when I was 14 and finally whispered, "I'm scared of him," to Mom in the laundry room, she'd sighed and said, "He's just stressed." We weren't perfect parents, but we did our best. We did our best is their favorite shield. Tonight, "We weren't perfect" came out wrapped in that same energy. I'll admit just enough to look self-aware, but not enough to mean anything. "You okay?" My brother, Nate, murmured beside me, so quietly I almost missed it. His knee bumped mine under the table. "Yeah," I lied. He glanced toward Dad, then back at his plate. "Just don't start," he muttered. "Please." That's the other thing about going home. You fall back into your assigned roles faster than gravity. Dad, loud, jovial tyrant. Mom, peacekeeper, minimizer. Nate, avoider, clown. Me, the one who starts things by naming what everyone else feels and won't say. I watched Dad tear off a chunk of bread with those thick fingers I used to be terrified of. Nobody gets it right all the time, he continued, like he was saying something profound. Kids these days act like you have to be perfect or it's abuse. He actually air-quoted it. If I'd spoken to my old man the way some of these kids talk to their parents. He cut himself off, shaking his head, chuckling. There it was again, that laugh that lives in my nightmares. The one that usually comes right before or after something cruel. My therapist, Laura, has this thing she says, your body often knows the truth before your brain will admit it. Sitting at that table, my shoulders were up around my ears. My stomach was clenched so tight the stuffing on my plate might as well have been rocks. My teeth hurt from how hard I was grinding them together. Truth vibrating under my skin. Dad, I said before I could talk myself out of it. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears, steadier than I felt. You didn't just not get it right all the time. You were really mean. A lot. And scary. The words seemed to echo. Scary. 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 Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Nate's eyes widened. Dad's face did this tiny twitch, like a glitch in a video game character, before he rearranged it into a grin. Oh, here we go, he said. The trauma lecture. There's no lecture, I said. My heart was thudding so loud I could barely hear myself. You made a joke about it. I'm just not laughing. You could feel the energy in the room change, the way rooms do right before a thunderstorm. The football game muted in the background on the TV suddenly felt too bright, shadows flickering over Dad's face. Somewhere in the house, the dishwasher hummed. We did our best. Mom jumped in quickly, her voice high and brittle. You had a roof, food, Christmas presents. We weren't perfect, but that's the bare minimum, I said, cutting her off. My hands were shaking now. I put my fork down so I wouldn't fling gravy everywhere. A house isn't a personality. Paying the bills doesn't cancel out screaming at your kids until they cry. Hey! Dad snapped, the laugh gone. There he was, the man I grew up with. Watch yourself. This is my house. And just like that, I was 8 again, standing in the same dining room, staring at the pattern on the floor tiles while he yelled because I spilled milk. My cheeks burned, throat tight, that hot shame flooding my body like a drug. Back then, I'd apologize until my voice shook. I'd say anything to make him stop. Now, 30-year-old me squeezed the edges of my chair and concentrated on the feel of the wood under my fingers. Laura taught me that, grab something solid. Remind your body you're in the present. In the present, I am not trapped. I have a car parked out front. I have an apartment to go home to. If I stand up and leave mid-speech, no one can physically stop me. I am watching myself, I said, very closely. That's literally what therapy is. Watching the ways I am still afraid of you and trying to not pass them on to anyone else. Dad scoffed. Afraid of me, he repeated, like I'd suggested I was afraid of a kitten. Don't be ridiculous. I never laid a hand on you. That's his favorite technicality. We grew up in the no-spanking era, or at least the tail end of it. He took pride in not needing to hit us to make us behave. He preferred yelling, slamming doors, knocking things off counters, getting in your face until you could feel the spit on your skin. You punched the wall next to my head, I said, when I was 11, because I forgot to take the chicken out of the freezer before you got home. Mom made a little choking sound. Now you're exaggerating, she said. It wasn't next to your head. It was, I said. My voice was shaking now. I had plaster dust in my hair after. I remember picking it out in the bathroom. Dad shifted in his chair. I was mad, he said. I'd worked a 12-hour shift and there was no dinner sorted. I hit the wall. Big deal. The wall can take it. I couldn't, I said. Silence. Nate put his phone down under the table, finally. From my left, quietly. I remember that, he said. Dad shot him a look. Stay out of it, he growled. No, Nate said. His voice wobbled, but he kept going. I do. She locked herself in the bathroom. Mom told me to leave her alone. She was being dramatic. Mom closed her eyes briefly like she was bracing for impact. I was doing my best, she said. almost whispering. "There it is again," I said softly. "Your best. The thing no one warns you about when you start unpacking this stuff is how sad it is. Not just sad for yourself, but sad for what your parents could have been if they'd done their own work." I looked at Mom's tight face, at Dad's defensive posture, at Nate's hunched shoulders, and it hit me like a wave. They really think this is all they had in them. "Look," Dad said, putting his hands flat on the table like a judge. "We're not doing this. Not at Thanksgiving. We came here to have a nice dinner, not get interrogated like criminals." "I didn't bring it up," I said. "You did. You joked about my childhood trauma like it's some TikTok trend. Not the reason I had a panic attack in the cereal aisle last month because a man shouted at his kid. You need thicker skin," he shot back. "The world's not going to tiptoe around your feelings." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm trying to heal them, so I can function in that world instead of melting down or shutting down every time someone raises their voice." I swallowed, feeling tears burn at the corners of my eyes. "I'm not asking you to tiptoe. I'm asking you to stop pretending you were a decent dad when you weren't." Mom looked like she was about to cry. "That's so harsh," she whispered. "He put food on the table. He worked so hard. You never went without. How can you say he wasn't decent?" "Because decency isn't measured in paychecks," I said. "It's measured in whether your kids felt safe around you. And I didn't. Not once." That was the line that did it. I could see it in their faces. Something inside both of them closed up. Dad's jaw clenched, his eyes going flat. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're ungrateful," he said finally, shaking his head. "This generation, man. You have no idea what real hardship is. If you'd grown up the way I did." "I know," I cut in. "You told us. Poverty, your dad drank, your mom hit you with anything she could reach. I get that you had it worse. That doesn't make what you did good. It just means you moved the needle from horrific to technically non-physical. That's not the flex you think it is." I expected yelling at that point. A slammed fist. Something. Instead, he went quiet in that dangerous way he does, where his anger turns cold instead of hot. "I'm done," he said, pushing his chair back so hard it scraped. "I'm not going to sit here and be called a monster at my own table." "I didn't call you a monster," I said. "I called you what you were. Not decent." A laugh burst out of me then, sharp and humorless, cut through my own tension like glass. "The thing is, you said, we weren't perfect. Like you were expecting me to jump in and go, 'Oh, you were great, Dad.' But you weren't. And I'm not going to lie to make you comfortable anymore." "Get out," he said, voice low. Mom gasped. "Jim." "No," he said. "If she thinks we're such terrible people, she doesn't have to eat our food. She can go be traumatized somewhere else." This is where 4 years ago me would have fallen apart. I would have begged, apologized, said, "I didn't mean it like that," tried to smooth it over. Because the idea of being thrown out of my parents' house triggered every primal survival alarm in my body. Now, sadly, I have practice. Practice walking away. Practice surviving the aftermath. Practice realizing that I am actually physically okay even when my emotional brain is screaming I'm doomed. My hands were shaking, but I stood. My chair scraped to its own protest. "Okay," I said. My voice sounded weirdly calm. "I'm going to go." Mom shot up. "You're leaving?" she said, like I'd lit the tablecloth on fire. "You're really going to ruin Thanksgiving like this?" I almost laughed. I was ruining Thanksgiving. In the same breath, Dad had basically told me to get out. It would be funny if it didn't hurt so much. "I didn't ruin it," I said. "It was already what it was. I just said it out loud." Nate stood too, scraping his own chair back. "I'll give you a ride," he said, even though he knew I'd driven. His eyes were pleading. "Don't leave me alone here," they said. "It's okay," I told him, grabbing my bag from the back of the chair. "I've got my car. Stay. Eat dessert." He looked torn. Dad glanced between us, something like panic flashing under the anger. "He hates the idea of Nate siding with me." "Sit down, son," he said. Don't get dragged into her drama. Nate's jaw clenched. He sat, but he didn't pick his fork back up. Happy Thanksgiving, I said, because my sense of irony refuses to die. No one answered. The air outside was cold and sharp. I stood on the front step for a second, my lungs sucking in the night like I'd been underwater. The porch light buzzed overhead. The neighbors' wind chimes clinked in the distance. In the warm glow spilling out from the dining room window, I could see vague shapes moving. Mom picking up plates, Dad gesturing angrily, Nate staring at the table. I sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel and did exactly what Laura taught me. 5 things I could see: the cracked dashboard, the stain on my jeans, the keychain my friend bought me, my chipped thumbnail, the half-empty water bottle in the cup holder. For things I could feel: the cold leather under my legs, the roughness of the steering wheel, my hair on my neck, my heart pounding. 3 things I could hear: muffled voices through the window, a dog barking down the street, my own breathing. 2 things I could smell: turkey still lingering on my clothes, the pine air freshener. 1 thing I could taste: stale wine on my tongue. Only when my heartbeat slowed did I start the engine. The drive home was quiet. My phone buzzed twice. Once with a text from Mom, "You didn't have to storm out. We always do this at holidays," and once with one from Nate, "I'm sorry." I remember more than I let on. Call later? I didn't reply to either right away. I put my phone face down on the passenger seat and let the silence stretch. Here's the thing. People love the idea of redemption arcs. We eat up stories where a parent realizes the error of their ways, cries, apologizes, goes to therapy, and everyone hugs it out over pie. That's what I secretly wanted when I walked into that house tonight. That maybe "we weren't perfect" would be followed by "we're trying to be better and we're sorry for the ways we hurt you." Instead, I got what I've always gotten: minimizing, deflecting, turning my pain into an attack on them. The only difference is that this time, I didn't swallow my reaction. I didn't accept "we weren't perfect" as the final word. I don't know what happens from here. Maybe I won't be invited next year. Maybe they'll pretend this never happened and send me a group text of the family gathered around the table without me. Maybe Mom will call tomorrow and ask if we can agree to disagree about the past. What I do know is that tonight, sitting at that ugly old dining table under 2 bright lights, I finally understood something. It's not my job to make my father feel like he was decent. He either was or he wasn't, and my nervous system has already cast its vote. At Thanksgiving, Dad laughed. We weren't perfect. Like it was a get-out-of-jail-free card. For a long time, I let that be enough. I let "not perfect" cover a multitude of sins. Now, I'm done grading on that curve. I don't need perfect. I would have settled for decent, respectful, non-terrifying. He couldn't or wouldn't give me that, so I'm giving it to myself instead. Decency, safety, the right to tell the truth about what it felt like to grow up in that house. Even if the only place I can say it without being told I'm ruining dinner is here, to a bunch of strangers who know what that laugh sounds like.